Good afternoon, and welcome to another session of ENG3E Term 2A, brought to you by WASA Distance Education Center and your instructor. That's me, Mike Laverty. Today is Tuesday, March the 21st, 2023, and this is Class 21 of a 34 class course. So we're getting our way through. We're about 2/3 of the way through, working through the unit assignments of Unit 4. So just a reminder, there are 5 units in ENG3E. That's grade 11 Workplace English. So once we've got this unit out of the way, we have to cover Unit 5. And then after Unit 5 is taken care of, we will start to look back on the course as a whole, reflect on what we've learned, go over the key concepts, the key literacy concepts that we've covered in this course, the different forms of communication, and start getting you ready to write the final exam. But before we do that, we've still got Unit 4 to take care of. So we'll look at the first assignment. We didn't have time to do it yesterday. The first one is a writing assignment, so we'll review the writing process, which is, of course, planning, writing, revising, editing, and publishing as it relates to, writing longer assignments. And we'll look at assignments 6 through 9. So again, we're on week 6 of Term 2A. We will have weeks 7, 8, and 9 to come. The last day to register for Term 2B is Friday, April the 7th, so please keep that date in mind if you're thinking about registering for a course in Term 2B. You should do that before Friday, April the 7th. And June 15th is graduation day. So we're getting very close to that date. You got less than 3 months to go before the graduation date. So, we talked a little bit about this in yesterday's class, so now is the time to start thinking about how you're going to wrap up this school year, what you can achieve in that time, and, having a realistic look at what you've accomplished so far and what you can get done. So there's certainly enough time to get started with one course, and and that's all it really takes, right? Just one course at a time. I know there's certainly a lot of students have feelings of they want to rush through and they want to get their Ontario secondary school diploma as fast as possible, and I totally get that feeling. But you also have to be realistic with your time and just know how much time you can devote to your courses. So there is time to get a course done, maybe 2, but you need to start planning that out and keep that June 15th graduation date in your mind. Units 1, 2, and 3 are done. We are working our way through Unit 4. We should need, for sure, the rest of this week, so today, tomorrow, and Thursday, and then a little bit of week 7 to finish off Unit 4. Then, of course, we will jump into Unit 5, and we'll have the last week 7 and 8 to do that. And then we'll spend a lot of time talking about the final exam. So it's good to sort of plot that out, to plan it out. You need about, this is a 9-week course in the sense that I deliver 9 weeks of classes to you. And then after those 9 weeks of classes, there is, that's the time when you would schedule to write your final exam or complete a course culminating activity. So as we get closer to the deadline, I'll break down those 2 activities, those 2 final activities, either your final exam or your course culminating exam. So if you're tuning in live on 91.9 FM, thanks for joining us. Please note you can always phone the studio at 1-800-465-7144 or our local number 1-807-737-4017. You can listen on Bell ExpressVu channel 972 and go to zoom.us click the join button, and it'll ask for a meeting ID, and we are at 417-6699-799. And you can always reach out to me if you have any trouble with the Zoom link or understanding how that works. So of course, and if you can't watch or listen to us live, then you can always check out the YouTube channel. So just search for Laverty Wassa and on YouTube, and you'll find my channel. Okay, so and then please reach out to myself personally if you have any questions about this course or any English courses in general. So that's MLAVERTY at nnecschools.org. Find me on Facebook, hit me up on Messenger, Laverty Wassa. Phone me at 1-807-737-1488, extension 2211. If you get the receptionist, just ask for Mike. Or toll free at 1-800-667-3703. And at this point, you should have, if you've, 5 weeks in, should have made contact with your teacher, that's myself, through email, messenger, or phone, read the study guide, along with units 1 to 4. So that's the handout. So you should have read those, or at the very least skim them. Completed all your assignments from Unit 1 and 2, and begun working on your Unit 3 assignments. All right, so here's today's lesson. We will look at our words of the day. So on our second class of the week, which is usually on a Tuesday, I like to do some words of the day. We'll look at Unit Assignment 1, which is asking you to describe an adventure, and look at Unit Assignment 6 through 9. So we're bouncing around a little bit, but we ran out of time yesterday, mostly because I was having some technical difficulties, so we lost a bit of time there, so I apologize for that. But today we will devote the time to Unit 1, the time that it deserves. So we'll do a close reading of 3 assigned textbook readings. So these are from your anthology. This is from the Road Ahead anthology. So we have City Street Map, Safety Guidelines for Young Children, and the poem You Can't Help Smiling. And so our learning goals are to review those 3 textbook readings and to review the writing process. Just to go over the process for working on longer assignments, so writing in full paragraph formats, or writing in multiple paragraph formats, or the culminating activities where you're writing, short essays that ask you to string along, several paragraphs together. So when you're building something and you want it to be meaningful and make a connection with your audience, then you need to do some planning and some revision, and just kind of shape and guide your writing into something you want to see and be proud of. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, and your success criteria will be to brainstorm ideas for completing assignments 6 through 9 from Unit 4. So that's while you're listening to my discussion today, as we review the unit assignments, you can brainstorm some ideas, either just inside your head or by keeping a pen and a pad beside you and jotting down some ideas. So you might want to try that. Everybody has different methods for when they listen to a lecture. When they listen to a class, they have different ways of keeping their mind focused. So I know, going back to my college and university days for sure, and high school, towards my last couple of years of high school, where I became a much more focused and attentive student. I was pretty checked out for the first couple of grades, but then I think grade 12 for sure, by the time that rolled around, I was a little more on top of things and was more into my classes, and I would always have a pen and a pad, and I wasn't the most organized note taker. I didn't have like specific categories, and sometimes I wouldn't even refer back to the notes, but I just like to have my hand busy, either just doodling something or drawing something. But I learned later that if I was a little more focused and I kept notes and tried to give myself like action items and give myself things to work on and just little notes to yourself, like use this for assignment 10, or think about this idea for assignment 11. So when you're keeping notes, just you're giving your future self some instructions. So just think of it that way, that there's the self, there's you in the moment, listening and paying attention, but you're doing that with a purpose to think about completing an assignment in the future. And we'll practice the writing process to complete Unit 1, describe an adventure. So we'll review the writing process, and then you will go and practice it on your own. So here's our Anishinaabe Moan words of the day. So we have aki, which is which is a noun. It's got 3 different meanings. So it can refer to the earth itself, land, or ground. It can refer to a specific country or a territory. And it can actually also refer to moss. So all of this according to an online Ojibwe dictionary. So I'm hoping that it accurately reflects how this language is used in your community and other communities. I know there's many dialects. So and it's also worth mentioning that I do not speak this language, but I do like to incorporate it into my teaching as a way to look at language and how to look at this Anishinaabe language and sort of compare it to English and make some connections with some key concepts in the class. And then we have Aki Mazinaigan, which is a noun which means a map. So Mazinaigan is a word on its own that can refer to like a document, a text, or a book in general, right? And then when you put the aki prefix in front of it, then you have a document that talks about the land. So you get a map. Aki Mazinaigan is a map. Which, and then the English word of the day is orientation. And I've included 3 of the definitions for the word. One is an introduction, as to guide one in adjusting to a new surroundings, employment, activity, or the like. So this is like orientation when you get a new job, and someone or several people organize an event or give you a stack of papers to read through. It depends on where you work. Some workplaces don't have like a great orientation process, and they just sort of throw you in there and they say, here's where you work, get to it. Other workplaces are much more welcoming and give you a sense of what's happening. This is a new place, you don't know what's going on, and it's our job to welcome you to it. It also means one's position in relation to true north, to points on the compass, or to a specific place or object. So orientation in this sense means like working from a map and knowing where you are relative to other things. And one specific meaning of that is where you are in relation to true north. A third meaning is the ascertainment of one's true position as in a novel situation with respect to attitudes, judgments, etc. And I like this definition. This one's a little more kind of metaphoric. It's sort of like your orientation in life. So it's about being grounded and knowing what you want out of life. And you can be thrown into new situations and be given new challenges, but you have that inner orientation, those inner values and things that you want to do. And then when you lose that sense of who you are and what you want out of life, then you lose your orientation and you start to feel lost, and that can be often the beginnings of like, dark times in your life, or maybe you're feeling depressed, disconnected from people, even from, people around you, your family, your friends, your workplace, or whatever. And this happens in life. I know I can certainly relate to it at times in my life where I've felt that way, where I've lost my orientation. So it's a good word, and it's a good sort of model and concept for thinking about life, right? So and I like that sense because we're always going to be put in different situations, and we're always going to be put into novel situations and new situations, and we're going to be tested, and we're going to have to deal with hardships. And if we have a map or a guideline or just something that points us in the right direction, then it's not going to solve all our problems, but it's certainly going to make life a lot easier. And I've got two young boys, and I'm hoping that my wife and I have provided them with are starting to give them their own orientation, their own map, so they can make their way in life. And I think you want to kind of, especially when you're a parent, you want to just do everything for them when they're younger, and then of course they get older, and you have to sort of step back. But at the same time, you don't want to do that unless you know they're going to make the right decision. But of course, they have to get out there and make the wrong decisions and learn from them. So, and then I think when you become an adult, it's not like you hit the age of 18, you got it all figured out, right? So you have to kind of continually update your map and keep checking if you're moving in the right direction, and that all sort of ties in nicely with the overall metaphor of ENG3E, which is where all 5 units are divided into the themes of preparing for the journey, setting out, attaining the quest, and kind of moving on to the future. I feel like I missed one. Yeah. Unit 1, preparing for the journey. Unit 2, setting out. Unit 3, the journey itself. Unit 4, which is what we're on now, which is attaining the quest. And Unit 5, which is what the future holds. All right, so let's jump right into unit assignments. So this is unit assignment 6 from Unit 4. And it says, name 2 work situations in which a map like the ones on pages 144 to 145 in our anthology, The Road Ahead, would be useful. So we're looking for 1 or 2 work situations in which using a map would be helpful. And I've got those 2 pages from the anthology are up on the screen. If you're listening online, I'll do my best to describe them. So we have 2 pages from a city atlas, and I'm reading directly from the textbook. It says, "Notice the grid that sits over the map, and notice how the numbers on the grid help you find places on the map." So, and this is very common to maps that you, like, for example, would buy at like a gas station when you're traveling, and they're arranged by a grid. So in this case, you've got numbers going across the top, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then you've got the numbers going down the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so a map, especially a map like this, which is of Toronto, which is a huge city with tons of intersections, streets, neighborhoods, parks, districts. It's massive. It can feel overwhelming, and that's why we have the map, and that's why things are divided up into grids, and you can just sort of chunk things up, and it sort of helps. And most of these maps will have, like, if you look up a specific location in the back, it'll tell you what page you'll find that location on, and it'll tell you what grid you'll find it on. So for example, if I'm looking for this high park right here, that's on grid C4 on page 24 of my map. So these are just examples of a map. that would work. And so the question says, think of a work situation in which a map like this would be useful to you. So we could brainstorm a few options to think about that. I'm thinking about being an Uber driver, right? Uber driver or a taxi driver, you need to know those delivery locations. Being a mover, or a delivery worker, you would need to know, where you're dropping off these locations. You could brainstorm some other occupations, work situations. So when I think work situation, I'm just thinking, a specific job, and then you could even get more specific. So an Uber driver, you know, picking up a passenger. And if you've ever driven in an Uber or taken a taxi cab, you'll note that most taxi drivers don't rely upon physical maps anymore. They rely upon GPS to get them around a city. And I think there's like many famous cities in the world, like New York and London, where the taxi drivers actually had to pass like a test. They had to memorize these maps and study them and know where everything was in the city. And then when Uber came along, they sort of married and combined Uber with GPS. So you don't have to memorize everything, but you have to know how to use the map. So even though maps have changed a lot, from we still produce maps in physical format, ones you can fold out and use, and those maps are still useful and still in production. But most maps are are digital in nature. They're on a GPS machine, or they're pulled up on an app on your phone, for example. But you're still using the map, and you're still using it in a work situation. So I'm thinking about an Uber driver, a taxi driver, a mover, a delivery driver. So I mean, most of these work situations are going to be someone who's is using a vehicle of some format. They're using a vehicle to move around the city. They are a city planner would also use maps, right? A city planner, someone who looks at a map of the city and sees how things could work. They might use it. You might even have a realtor, someone who works in real estate and sells property. They need to know where things are in the city. They need to know where to find certain neighborhoods and just to go around and see them. Let's see, a tour guide. Yeah. So just for this situation, think of two work situations. So think of an occupation, and then think about a situation where somebody would be in that occupation. Question 7. Why do you think the article Safety Guidelines for Young Children is included for reading in this unit? One sentence. So on page 146, there's 4 pages of this article. It's from the Ontario Medical Association Committee on Accidental Injuries. They produced a poster to let parents and caregivers know how to keep young children safe. Skim the piece quickly. What elements of the poster catch your eye first? So we got these 4 pages. The first set of guidelines are for children's ages 1 to 2. And then so there's 16 guidelines, and and it's published in a very colorful format with large blue numbers to identify each of the 16 pieces of advice. You've got some illustrations of children's toys. The second part cover children from the ages of 2 to when they attend kindergarten. So 4, 5, and 6, and you've got 15 more recommendations, 15 more ways to keep children safe and kind of guidelines to follow. And the question simply is, why do you think the article safety guidelines for children, young children, was included for reading in this unit? One sentence. So we can think about what the unit is. It is attaining the quest. So you could ask yourself, like, who is the audience? You know, who is the audience of this reading? So that's you, right? You know, so who is the audience? You know, why include this? Why include this article, right? So we're thinking about the purpose of this article. You know, who's the audience for this reading? Why would they include this reading in your package? So why would a student of grade 11 workplace English be given this article? So think about the content of the article. So what's in there? Think about how it's organized. So that's basically the hint that I'll give you there. So you do have to think about the content of the article, but also think about how it's organized, because that's a foundational, that's a core concept that we're going through in ENG3E. Almost every unit, every assignment has this core idea that we're not just looking at information. So communication in the workforce, communication in like an artistic point of view, like writing poems, writing short stories, or in a business setting, writing memos, writing reports. It's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it and how you organize it and who you give it to and how you give it to them and how you present it to them and how many people it's shared with, right? So think about the content, like what's in it. Think about its organization. How was the content organized? Think about the context, you know, and context is like, who was it for? Who made it? Who was it for? When did they make it? Right. So these are all really important questions you want to ask. So about this article and about other things, right? It's about putting things in their context. So what's in the article? How is the article written? How is it actually printed on the page? Think about the visual elements. Think about the text elements, and think about the context, right? So who was it meant for? Why would it be included? The original context was to educate parents about safety concerns for their kids, but then it was sort of repurposed and put in a new context and included in a textbook meant to teach people about English, right? So just think about that. All right. Question number 8. Do you like doing things that require physical labor? Why or why not? Give an example or examples of some physical labor that you may enjoy and which makes you smile. And this is, of course, in relation to a poem from your assigned readings. That is You Can't Help Smiling by Jim Green. So I can certainly think of a few examples of physical labor that I like doing. I love hauling firewood, love chopping down trees or finding already fallen trees in the forest and using my chainsaw to delimb them and buck them up into logs that I can throw in the back of a truck to then bring back to my house and to split and to dry in the sun and then stack and then bring it inside. And so I really do love the process of getting firewood. I think it's I've been living in a home for the past 10 years, and we've heated that home with wood, and that's something that we've done and that I haven't done. So that's one example that I would go. An example of physical labor that makes me smile. But let's have a look at this poem first and see if it spurs any other connections, or if we can make any other insights. All right, You Can't Help Smiling by Jim Green. You can't help smiling when the chainsaw is roaring. You've got chips in your mouth, exhaust and turpentine in your nose, and your hands are numb. You're limbing, cutting, stacking, working up one hell of a sweat. It's just like it was when... Carl thinking of Idaho, me of the mountains north of Montana, both of us younger then. And it's good work, swinging the saw along the limbs, burning it through thick logs, getting the blade bound and working it loose. Then noticing when you stop for a breather, the morning mist just pulling away from the mountains. You can't help smiling. So I think this one, there's a couple of things here that you could go with. So you've got the physical sensation of having the tool in your hands, and the exhaustion and feeling the hard work itself. There's spending time with other people, like doing the work with other people. You know, in this case, you've got the voice of the poem. Working with his friend Carl in this case, so it's like sometimes the physical labor might just be on your own, independent of other people, but sometimes it's more about like working with other people. When I was in my 20s, I worked at a laundry plant in Winnipeg, and it was it was hard work, and I worked 10-hour days, and I was a shipper, so I was constantly just picking objects up, stacking them on shelves, loading up trucks, unloading trucks some of the time. But so it was hard work, but I loved my coworkers, and it was a lot of fun working with them, and that was a big part of the job. And I love the ending of this poem, where you stop for a breather, and then you look up and you see the morning mist pull away from the mountains, and you can't help smiling. So I think in this case, it's about being outside. And I also love gardening. I love growing things. I love being outside, feeling the soil. And it's when you're moving and you're connected, and it's like all your five senses are activated. So you've got the smell. Yeah, I think this poem is very sensual. There's sights, there's sounds, there's smells, there's feelings, there's physical sensations. Right? So it's very tactile. Like it's very, yeah. That's the kind of things that I think about. So when I go back to the assignment, Unit 8, do you like doing things that require physical labor? Why or why not? Give an example of some physical labor that you may enjoy and which makes you smile. So maybe with that in mind and what we've learned from looking at that poem, you can think about, think about the feeling. I would focus on that, the feeling you get. When doing that work. That physical labor, right? And then, yeah, so a physical labor that makes you smile. So the feeling you get when working, and then and you could think about your senses here, right? So, think about the five senses. What about it makes you smile? What about it specifically? So get specific. What is it that makes you smile? And for me, when it comes time to like stacking the wood, what makes me smile is to see the wood pile grow over time and accumulate it. And in recent years, that smile has come from seeing my sons do the work, and and then just as it was done with me and my father, complaining about having to be stuck out there doing the work, and that's sort of like the classic father-son, parent-child thing that happens all the time. The parent wants the kid to appreciate doing the thing, the kid doesn't want to do it, and there's that kind of struggle going back and forth. But it's just sort of, I think for me, the ultimate sort of smile is to see them appreciate it on their own without sort of like me forcing them to appreciate it. Because as you all know, that you don't appreciate anything if you feel forced to, right? Or if you feel compelled to do it. Like if someone drags you outside and says, "Hey, look at that sunset," right? But if you're not in the mood for it, or if you're preoccupied, you got something else, that sunset might be so beautiful that it kind of jars you out of it. But like usually, you know, the things in life that you appreciate the most are the ones that nobody has to force you to do it. Nobody has to hold your hand. You just like doing it. So give an example of something you like, and be specific about it. And if you can, list a specific scene, or a memory, or a situation. So if it was me answering this question, then I would be focused on comparing my childhood memories of stacking and getting firewood with my current situation with my two boys, and trying to get them involved and get them doing the work too. So that's the way I would focus on the question. All right, question 9. In the play The Blame, what happens that results in some suspicion and discussion among co-workers at an auto body shop? Is the matter resolved in the end? So this is at least 2 sentences. It's worth 3 marks. So I'd like to give it some more time, but I really want to focus on question 1. But the guidance I would give you here is to just simply focus on the characters. Oh, to give me 1 moment. All right. Sorry about that. I am back. But what I would do for this is to talk about the play. Just talk about the. I would name the specific characters. Name the specific characters. Who. Tell me who is suspected of what. Name the problem, right? And, answer the question, was it resolved? Was the problem resolved? And I would also suggest that you think about the problem, think about the problem from different perspectives, right? So think about different perspectives, right? Right? So think about the problem from the owner of the shop. Think about the problem from the employees. working in this shop. Think about this problem, you know, from, you know, the person who is who has the problem, who has the missing object, right? And then you know, being you know, so what went missing, who was suspected of taking it, how did the situation actually break down? But just think about the different perspectives, right? So being a boss, being an employee, so it's really about the sort of different relationships that happen in a workplace, right? And the situation is um, it is different depending on who's involved in the situation, right? So the boss is looking at it differently than the employees do, and so I would think about that way. So think about the coworkers, think about the relationship between the coworkers, think about how each one of them relates to the boss. You know, one of them has a very special relationship with the boss, right? So think about things like that when you answer question 9. All right, which brings us back to question 1 that we didn't really have enough time to really devote yesterday. So with this question, it reads, the word quest in the unit's title means a journey for adventure. The word adventure means a daring or unusual experience. If you are attaining the quest, you are therefore reaching or accomplishing something adventurous. Describe an adventure that you have had recently or plan to have in the near future. An example of an adventure would be spending a night alone in the bush. One paragraph containing at least 6 sentences. So we've got about a little over 10 minutes left here in the class. So what I'll do is I'll just do a little live demonstration of me typing up some notes on this and getting myself started on this assignment. So I'm going to open up my Word document, and then I'll share that screen. Okay, there we go. All right, there we go. So I got my Microsoft Word up, so I'm just going to zoom in here. And so what we're doing here is, okay, we've got Unit 4, Assignment 1. And so what I'd like to do with you is just to go over the steps of the writing process. Yeah, so the step 1 of the writing process is the planning process. And step 2 is the writing process. Step 3 is the revision is the revision process. Step 4 is the editing process, and then step 5 is the publishing process. So we've got revision, step 4 is editing, and step 5 would be the planning process. So for me, I'm actually going to write about an adventure that I took many years ago with my father, but it's the first one that came to mind. So I would just sort of, you know, I'm going to do a sort of like an outline. So, you know, and these are like instructions to myself. So this is what I do, and you don't have to do it this way, but I like to do it this way. So, so write a paragraph about the canoe trip I took with my dad in high school. I think it was in high school, maybe grade. I can't remember. Actually, I'm kind of getting fuzzy on the dates. It was either I was either in grade 8 or grade 9. I think I was in grade 9 actually when I did that. So summer of grade 9? Question mark. It's not terribly important, but I'm just trying to get the timeline down, right? So I will include the following details. So if you're going to do the adventure, you know, when you write a story, you can have, I'm going to call them details / plot points. And those are the things you want to mention, right? So there was we found an eagle feather right when we started. You know, the bird. This is a true story, by the way. It was really cool. You know, the bird was in the water, and then flew off, leaving the feather. So I want to include that detail. We saw rock paintings. I brought a book and sketched some of them. Still have it too. I still have that paper, like with the sketching on it. Let's see, we were caught. We were caught in a storm. The canoe almost tipped over, and then we did tip the canoe over, going through some rapids. So that was kind of terrible, but yeah. So I would include those points in there, and then yeah. So I mean, I'm just thinking of like some. And so I would suggest that you do this too. So before you start writing the thing, just think about some details, some plot points from the scenes that you're talking about. And you know, it's only going to be a paragraph, so you're just focusing on the. You don't really have time to go into much detail, but you can just you're giving an overview of the whole trip, the whole adventure. So, you know, and that can be part of your outline. So, need to talk about the beginning of the adventure, the cool stuff, that happened, and how it ended. And then, you know, I think it's not really like a huge detail, but it's, you know, my uncle, he dropped us off at one location and then picked us up at a different one. So that's just, you know, a little bit of a planning session, and then what I can do is I can copy and paste those words, and I can just put them directly into a different sentence. So don't see it as like wasting time, or, you know, just jumping right into the story itself. If you feel you have something to say, then I would jump right into the poem, to the story itself, or to the adventure itself. But a little bit of planning can sort of help just get your mind back into it and just jot down, like 4 or 5 things that happened on the trip, things that you would talk about. And then when it comes time to the writing, and that's where you can just sort of jump right into it. So I would say something to the effect of, after, I think that's what happened, right? After I finished grade 9, my father and I took, I think it was a 4-day canoe trip that took us through several lakes and rivers in northwestern Ontario. And then give a more specific location. So sometimes when I do my writing, I like to give myself some questions. So, and then sometimes if I'm really organized, I will highlight them so I know that it's not part of my text, but I might come back to that. So there you go. So I did my planning. I wrote a sentence that I think will be my introductory sentence, and then from there I can just sort of talk about my uncle dropping us off, finding the eagle feather, the rock paintings, getting caught in the storm, and then when it comes time to revision, so revision is where you primarily organize what you have written. This will mostly be about listing the order of what happened, choosing the details to include, all that, etc., right? And then the editing process is going to be going, we'll be going over a rough copy to fix spelling mistakes. So editing is the small, sort of like when you zoom in on things and you change spelling mistakes, grammar, word choice, cutting a word or adding a word. So that kind of thing, right? So, and then, step 5 is not planning. Step 5 is publishing. So you plan it out. You sort of give yourself an outline. That's also where you want to just, give yourself some notes, like, double check the length requirements, and then the question to myself is, do I have enough sentences, right? So just these are sort of like notes to myself that I'll go back and I'll check on, right, to make sure that I've done everything. And then this is the writing itself can be down here, and then so I'll follow those steps to produce some writing that I like and I'm proud of, and I can work through my story. So, and then once the whole thing is written and you have a first draft in place, you might edit it. And then once you've edited it, you might think about it for a while and then go back and do some revisions and take out some details, add some new one. You might go back to the writing process, write some more content, but that's the way the process works. So, but that is all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow.